You and your family end up with a beautifully bound heirloom book to view and enjoy. As a longtime genealogist, my staff and I know precisely where to look. We know what to look for and to preserve your story. So consultations with me are always free. Create your family heirloom book for Mother's Day, Father's Day, or next Christmas by talking with me, Dan, at Dancestors Genealogy. So please reach out today by going to our website, www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's DANCESTORS genealogy.com, and fill out a contact request, and we'll get right back to you.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Today we're going to talk about an interesting subject. A very interesting subject, really. Something that I hadn't really thought about talking about. And, I think many of you that have listened to the show for as long as it's been on, golly, I can't believe 2012, we're in 2021. Wow, it's been some time, hasn't it? I think that many of you would have to agree that I'm a pretty positive person. And I would have to agree that many, if not most of my listeners are also as well. But I asked the question, and this was brought to me by a listener and somebody that I've gotten to know over the years. They actually asked me to bring up this subject, and I think it's interesting. So how do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line? When does positivity, because we talk about being positive, when does positivity turn toxic? And I think for the most part, most of us try to see the bright side of life, right? We try to see the bright side. However, sometimes things happen, right? Isn't the best of situations. We may get overwhelmed. We might get stressed out. It might be a life-changing situation. We may be worried. It might be something that we're just not ready to deal with. It could be a situation. It could be the loss of a family member. It could be, moving 15 miles away. It could be 1,500 miles away. It could be anything. It could be all kinds of different things that we're dealing with. It could be loss. It could be doubt. It could be economic situations. It can be depression. It can be, being upset with your job, being unhappy in your life. And we may go to a family member, a friend, and we go in the hopes of speaking our truth. We go in the hopes of letting them know about the situation that we're dealing with, right? And we try to express ourselves as best as we can. In the process, we get told to what? Just get over it. Come on, be more positive. Stop being so negative. Failure is not an option. Others have it way worse than you. Look at those kids in Africa, okay? And that's true. There's a lot of folks that probably are going through struggles. But do we have to qualify and quantify it? Do we have to tell someone to just stop being negative? Or just be positive? Put a smile on your face. And I think that the toxic positivity, and those are examples of toxic positivity, can invalidate our feelings and make us feel bad for not feeling perfect. It can make us feel bad for even bringing up our feelings. And I think nowadays, more than not, I think that a lot of times that when we bring up our feelings, sometimes in certain relationships, and I know that with working with as many folks as I do, and I'm so lucky to work with some amazing clients, 2020 and going through COVID wasn't very easy, and dealing with the family dynamic and everybody being home and people working from home, and and there's a lot of denying of other people's emotions, right? There's a lot of just get over it, move on, and I think so. We may begin to internalize and feel bad about feeling bad, and then guess what? The interesting thing is that when we internalize and feel bad about feeling bad, we then do what? Well, we beat ourselves up. I shouldn't feel bad. That's true. People in Africa do have it worse than me. I just need to get my head out of my butt and just figure this out. And I am not against optimism, okay? Because I'm a very optimistic person. Because I do think that optimism helps us greatly. I do think that when we are in a kind of a negative cycle when things seem to be happening to us, and a lot of us have experienced that. So, and it's interesting when you have friends that seem to be experiencing this uptick all the time, like things are always working for them. At least it seems like, and it seems like you've been kind of going through a downtick for maybe a long time. And it's hard because when that's happening, the person that's having that uptick doesn't really understand and hasn't gone through the trials and tribulations in a long time. So they don't really see that they could be more thoughtful or better there for you, being able to understand your plight. I've also realized too is that the toxic positivity to me sometimes is what we learn from watching TV. It's what we've learned from parents and upbringing. It's also what we've learned when we and our feelings have been invalidated, right? And it's interesting because we don't realize when somebody does that, it only hurts, right? When you're, it's like when your mom or dad dies. I'm not trying to bring down the room. I'm not trying to bring down everybody listening on the radio right now in their car, and not trying to bring down everybody listening and watching on social media. But I'm saying when something like that happens, just kind of a, hey, I get it. I mean, I understand what's going on, and I've been there before, and anything I can do to help you, I will. And I think and we're going to talk about the differences and how to see the differences and maybe some ways that we can change, because we might be doing it ourselves because it's been done to us so much that we don't even realize we're doing it. We might be like saying things because we think we're doing the right thing. And I think to some degree, being positive to some degree is always the right way of doing things. However, we need to figure out when that positivity, when we've kind of jumped the hump into more of a toxic type environment. Toxic positivity, by the way, is the excessive and effective overgeneralization. So overgeneralizing things of a happy and optimistic state in any situation. In the denial, minimization, and invalidation of genuine human emotional experience. When a person exhibits toxic positivity, they deny any and all negative experiences that make us human and the lives and the life in this way. And so we're human, right? We're having this human experience on this planet we call Earth, right? So, okay, we got that figured out. So we got that going for us. But the thing is that when we overgeneralize things, when we minimize, okay? And also I think a lot of it's denial, because remember, a lot of folks who are exhibiting toxic positivity are in denial, and they're in denial of their own issues. And this is something I really want us to think about, because sometimes we just see when people are toxically positive to us, we're like, man, they just don't care. They just really don't care. It's all about them, isn't it? It's all about them. They must be having this great life. I look on Facebook, I look on Instagram. Oh, there they are with their new car and their new house and their new marriage and their new whatever. Wow. But I don't always believe that they're always coming from this perfect life, okay? Because there is no perfection. I actually believe that toxic positivity is a learned response to denying things. And I also feel another step, right? So I think that not only are folks denying their own reality, they are also denying their own problems. Okay, so think about it. If I'm dealing with a lot of issues in my life and I don't want to confront them, what's the best safety option? Okay, what are some of these best options and practices that I can use? Not that they're positive practices. I'm not saying that. I'm sorry, not positive. I'm not saying they're healthy practices. But what are some of the defense mechanisms that I can use? So I really want you to think about this. Defense mechanisms. So defense mechanisms, one of the biggest defense mechanisms on this planet is denial. I can deny the fact that this has ever happened to me. I can deny the fact that this even impacts me. I can deny my emotions. I mean, how often have you run into someone who's recently lost a family member or somebody very close to them, and they're like, no, I'm fine. I'm good. Yeah, I'm great. No, don't worry. And it's like they're in complete denial of the fact that it happened. Now, we're not looking for somebody to be on the ground sobbing. That's not what we're looking for. But a little connection to some sort of emotion would be good, right? Because we could see that the person is dealing with the grief, going through the processes of grief, being able to at least connect somewhat to their emotions, right? But that's what I'm thinking, is that when people are exhibiting toxic positivity, I don't think it's always. Now there are some people that really genuinely aren't really caring about your life. That, it's just kind of like it's kind of like this comment they make, right? Oh yeah, yeah, you're fine, man. It's all gonna be fine. Don't worry about it, or you'll get over it. Or you need to always look at the bright side, or think happy thoughts, that kind of thing. And they're not really thinking about the implication. But I also believe that sometimes this is directly related to folks that are using this in their own life, right? So when this happens, when positivity is used to cover up or silence the human experience, it becomes toxic. I want you to think about that. When positivity is used to cover up or silence the human experience, it becomes toxic. And we've all had that situation when we feel sad about something and someone tells us to get over it. It all works out, right? And it's interesting because this can all begin to sink into our life. Maybe acting cheerful when we're not cheerful. Believing there's a need to pull ourselves out of negative thoughts. However, using fakery to do that, or fakery to make that a reality. So how do we change and pivot if we are engaging in toxic positivity and don't even know it? What are some changes that we can make in our communication that makes sense? What are some changes in our communication that we can make sense? How can we augment those types of things, right? Because I think that when we start understanding the differences, we begin to understand what needs to be augmented. Okay, so let's look at that and let's think about that. And, I think sometimes too, maybe a lot of times the toxic positivity is used is because we don't understand exactly how we should respond. Sometimes how should we respond? Because you don't want to respond too melancholy or too negative, because you don't know how that's going to impact somebody. And some of us might be, saying really positive things, but we don't really know what to say, right? And that's also a catch-22 as well. But I think that there's a way of saying things in a different way. I think there's also a way of maybe commenting to somebody that is giving you toxic positivity, and not in a way like, hey, what's going on here? I mean, like, this is toxic positivity. What's wrong with you? Why are you pushing that on me? Instead of that, saying, hey, I appreciate your comments, but, I came to you to be able to just have this discussion. I came to you to express, and you may have gone through this in your life, and it's given you this, but I do want to point out the fact that I was just needing maybe somebody to listen to, or somebody to understand. And I think some of the signs of toxic positivity, just to see how it shows up in our own life, is the first thing is that a lot of times if we're giving toxic positivity, or someone's giving toxic positivity to us, it really is masking or hiding our true feelings, right? And sometimes I find with clients, sometimes it's interesting when we first start working together, one of their ideas is to have like these platitudes, these positive platitudes. And I just don't agree with that. I mean, when things are challenging in our life, we have to deal with the challenges. We have to get involved. We have to find solution. We can always be consciously positive in that. But when we try to cover it up, right, that's when we kind of miss the boat. It's almost like putting that perfume out there when, it's like you can't cover the smell of poop with perfume. It just doesn't work. So it's like, first of all, we got to clean up the mess. Then by cleaning up the mess, we don't need to cover it up with this perfume. And that's what positive platitudes kind of are sometimes, right? And you see a lot of people using those. And sometimes that can get in the way. Well, it ultimately gets in the way of their development. It ultimately gets in the way of them dealing with the issue. And I think it allows them a fundamental way to deny their actual feelings. Stay tuned. We'll be talking more about signs of toxic positivity, as well as we'll be talking about optimism and the difference between optimism and toxic positivity. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time, 2 shakes.
I hope you've.
Hey friends, it's Ashley here. What I've done is I've turned off the satellite uplink so that we can communicate between the segments today, so that you're not bombarded by a bunch of ads, as well as we can communicate more. I just want to shout out to Zen and Me. Zen and Me, thank you for sending me this subject matter, and wanting on the air. I think this is a very interesting topic. I think positivity is something that's very important in my life. I'm a very positive person. I've tried going down the rabbit hole where I've been in negativity and I've been upset and I've been angry and I've tried to cover up those feelings. I've tried to go down the rabbit hole and continue to be, in that space. And I realized that if I continue in that space, I can continue down that space for a while to analyze why I'm feeling a certain way and why I'm feeling depressed or why I'm feeling upset. And then there becomes a time where there's no more depth to go into. We've lived it, we've felt it, we've gotten okay with that feeling, we've been in it, and then we're allowed to come out of that, right? And so I'm a big believer in it's good to feel our emotions, it's good to connect with our emotions. But I think that there comes a time when we are going through pain or sadness where there comes a time where we can feel it, and then we need to slowly, if we can, pull ourselves out of it, looking toward a positive situation in our life, not discrediting the situation that we're in, right? Because I don't want us to discredit any type of emotion that we're dealing with. I want to shout out to some folks that are here on the live stream. Mike Brown, great to see you. How are you doing? Ibra, great to see you. Thank you so much. I'm glad that my videos have helped. Don, great to see you. How are you doing? When you don't accept reality or don't own your own issues, this is what I think. Very, very well stated. Oren, great to see you. Julie, great to see you. Glad that you're here. Renee, glad that you're here. Julie, this is great. Let's see if we go down here. Going down the list here. Alan, great to see you. How are you doing? Jacqueline, great to see you. I hope your puppy's doing well. Let's see. Mystique, great to see you. How are you doing today? Benjamin, great to see you. How are you doing? I'm glad to see y'all. I think we're gonna have a pretty good show left for you. It's I think if we really kind of dig into this and really understand it, because I think that some of us are having this happen to us in the family dynamic. Some of us are dealing with this at the workplace. Some of us are dealing with this with our spouse, where everything's perfect. And maybe if you bring up one little thing, like maybe something that's gone wrong or something you're upset about, and you bring up one thing, and your spouse says, oh, why are you acting so negative? And you're not a negative person, so you don't really understand that. But it's like you can't even say one thing without that person claiming that you're being negative. And it can be harmful. You see what I'm saying? Because we've got to be able to speak our truth, at least to somebody, right? And you got to kind of figure out who that is. But it would be nice to be able to speak your truth and not worry how someone's going to feel, as far as changing that around and having that toxic positivity and being able to acknowledge that. Because I do think that it's about hiding. I do think it's about masking our feelings. So here we go. We're gonna jump back on the satellite uplink right now. We have 20 seconds.
By going to our website, www.dancestorsgenealogy.com. That's DANCESTORS genealogy.com, and fill out a contact request, and we'll get right back to you.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we've been tackling the concept of toxic positivity and how toxic positivity really is the overgeneralization of happy and optimistic state in any situation, denying and minimizing and invalidating our genuine human emotional experience. It's deep, right? When positivity is used to silence us or of the human condition, it can be toxic. Now, I'm not against positivity. You know me. If you've listened to anything of mine, if you've connected with me, if we've had a conversation, you know that I'm a positive person. However, I think that there's a difference between positivity and optimism and toxic positivity. And I do believe that a lot of folks out there are giving toxic positivity because they're also dealing with their own stuff. It's like if they don't kind of just like overgeneralize positive for everything, it's almost like there's all these things that are happening in their life. And if they see one person going through some pain, or they acknowledge that person's pain, maybe their pain becomes real too. Right. Because what I've realized is that nobody, okay, so I know this sounds weird, but it's interesting because I've had clients say, he's just not an emotional person. She's just not an emotional person. Okay, that's just not true unless somebody is antisocial behavior, okay, and they don't connect with their feelings, or don't have those feelings. Other than that, the people have feelings and emotions, they just haven't been able to connect with them. Like, there's a huge fear around it, or when they did connect with their emotions when they were young, they were invalidated. They could have been invalidated using toxic positivity. They could have been invalidated by, telling them that their feelings weren't good enough, right? Or that their feelings weren't valid, right? And so that's the thing, is that everybody has emotions and feelings. It just depends on how we're connected to it. Can we get into that? Can we feel? Can we be? And remember, thoughts and feelings are not different. So a lot of times people will say, well, I feel depressed, right? Or I feel anxious, or I feel guilt. Okay, it's not like I'm pumping air of guilt. Like, I'm not like pumping air into your AC unit that's filled with shame. You know what I mean? That's filled with anxiety. It's the thoughts that are in our head. It's the things that are happening in our life. It's the way we're processing it. That's our thoughts, and the situations become emotions, become feelings, right? And so being able to discover that and understand it, we don't have to wallow in it. I'm not sitting there saying, oh, everybody should wallow in their pain. We should have pity parties 24/7. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I am talking about is that we got to be able to feel the highs and lows. We've also got to be able to feel the neutrality, right? Because there's a lot of times in life where things are they're not neutral, because there's not really any complete neutrality, but it's not highs and lows, right? And a lot of times we live off these highs and lows. We live off the very black and white. We live off some of these extremes. And so I think that we need to get so deep into ourselves to a good positive way, where we say, okay, I'm feeling this feeling, I'm feeling this emotion, I'm dealing with these issues in my life. I'm doing the best I can to find solution, and then being able to find other people that understand that, hey, I'm not wallowing in this, and I'm definitely going to come out of this pretty quickly. But at the same time, I do have to discover these emotions, and I'm allowed to. I'm allowed to have a day where I don't feel that good. I'm allowed to wake up, not feeling great, or allowed to wake up and have kind of, a chip on my shoulder, and discover, not going through life and getting angry at everybody all day, but figuring out, where's that chip from? Why am I angry? Where is that resentment? Why am I upset? Where is that feeling coming from? And examining that feeling and being allowed to even discuss it. And I'm not talking about ad nauseum. Okay. I'm not talking ad nauseum, but being able to have someone that you can say, hey, yeah, I had a really crazy day, or had a really kind of bad day, and I'm walking through it, instead of having to deny our feelings and then or invalidating our feelings, or feeling as though other people are invalidating us. When I return, I'm going to be talking more about, I'm going to start talking about the difference actually between optimism and toxic positivity, and how to really know that difference. Understanding some of the defense mechanisms as well, because sometimes, we do things out of defense, right? We might keep people at bay with their problems because we don't have to deal with our own problems. So stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. Two shakes.
I hope you've enjoyed.
Hey friends, back here. Just turn off the satellite uplink again so that we can continue the conversation. I hope that this is resonating with y'all that are listening here live on Facebook. I hope this is connecting with y'all, because I understand. It was interesting when I first came across all this toxic positivity. I looked at it a while back, and I kind of put it off to the side, and then I kind of started looking at it again, and I said, you know what, it really can be, right? It really can be, because sometimes we're just going to feel a certain way. And remember, the human condition is we're not always supposed to be happy, joy all the time, even though we would love to. But I guess the concept is, if we were, would we actually appreciate where we are? And at the situation when you have gone up through a lot of ups and downs, and I think a lot of us have gone through a lot of ups and downs, and some of us maybe have gone through a lot of downs. And it's challenging, right? And so it's like, How much optimism is the right formulation? How much of it is me denying my feelings? Those are things that we do want to look at, because we want to make sure that we're kind of in it to win it. We want to make sure that we are really doing what we need to do to not only connect with ourselves and others, but to really look at our own value, to look at what we're doing in our life, right, and to understand that situation, and to really understand better yet, how to be good to ourselves, how to be good to ourselves, how to care for our own self. And I think that's where we need to go, because I don't think that a lot of people understand how to process their full emotions. So I feel too that sometimes going to friends that haven't been able to express themselves, it's going to be hard to express yourself to them. Okay, so Ben, you're dealing with somebody on that level. See, and that when you're dealing with someone like that, it's like how do you respond? And what I've realized is that the last thing we want to do is reprimand somebody, but at the same point, we can also speak our truth. And I think by speaking our truth, and just pointing out the fact that hey, we all go through trials and tribulations. We all have things that we're dealing with, maybe also turning the tables around and asking them if they're dealing with something as well. Fastest, yes, toxic positivity does not exist without interaction with other people. Now, yet that's true, except for sometimes some people are using toxic positivity on themselves. Okay, think about it. I've worked with some folks that are like, I just got to get out of it. I'm just going to overcome it. It's no big deal. I'm just going to be happy. I'm just going to let this go. Okay, I'm going to put a smile on my face, and I'm just going to forget that this ever happened. I mean, that is toxic positivity. I don't need to go talk about that. That has no relevance in my life. How abusive my parents were or anything like that. I think that some people have been trained to actually invalidate themselves, right? And I'm not, again, not a pity party here, but invalidation of self, right? So how often have we been in family dynamics where we're supposed to always have a smile on our face, where we're always supposed to feel a certain way? And I really think that there's something to be said about that. I really think that we need to kind of open this box and kind of look at, what this really means. Because I do think, fastest, I do agree that it happens with others, but I do agree that it can happen with our own self. Yes, a friend shared this with me a long time ago. She said that many people are living in an advanced state of complexity instead of living in an advanced state of simplicity. Personally, I really relate to this with some of the tougher things I'm dealing with in my life. I get that, and that's well said. That's well said. And we're going to go in, and I think a lot of us are dealing with complex pieces in our life, and we're dealing with things that are tough. And we have to, and I think how we deal with it can help other people deal with their situation. 64 max power. I'm going to help out with that. So don't worry. I'm going to bring out some other stuff so that we can totally compute this. Here we go. We're going back in 10 seconds.
50% off business and first class tickets.
800-871-3291. 800-871-3291. Again, that's 800-871-3291.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking about toxic positivity, the dark side of positivity, the dark side. There's light and there's dark. Positivity is positivity, and it's great. But sometimes positivity can be overgeneralized, right, on any sort of situation, marginalizing how we feel, okay? And that's when it turns toxic, right? So anytime that something turns toxic, it means that it's no longer healthy. It's no longer allowing us to live in a healthy state. And that can be hard to find sometimes. And sometimes it can be hard to wrap our brain around this type of toxic positivity because maybe we have a blind side to it because we've been raised around it our whole life, okay? So some of you may have been raised around it. Like, for example, everybody's here for the good. Everybody's going to help you out. Everybody's going to do you right. And a thought like that, not that I don't want to believe in everybody, because I want to believe in everybody, but you believe in everybody at their core, but sometimes the core gets masked, right? And so they start acting out from a different perspective. And so they're not always doing what's best for everybody. And so if we're believing maybe this toxic positivity, where if we were growing up in a household where we were told that everybody's a good person and that everybody always acts from the right place, we could possibly be taken advantage of, hurt, been found in a very stressful place. Maybe we were taken advantage of because we believed it. And so we really need to think about this, because that type of toxic positivity can lead us down that primrose, believing things that might not necessarily be true. But let's talk about some toxic positivity statements, and then talk about some more of some acceptance and validation statements, just so we can understand a little bit of the differences, because sometimes putting it into words can really help us. So, for example, a lot of times, some people might say, don't think about it. Just don't think about it anymore. Just stay positive. Don't think about it. A different response to that may be, hey, I'm listening to you. How are you feeling? Right? Just tell me more about how you're feeling. Just to allow and honor the fact that somebody can have that feeling. And maybe later on down the road, you can say, hey, I get it. Try to look more at the silver lining. Let's see how we can find that. But in the beginning, allowing somebody to express their feelings. Another example could be Don't Worry, Be Happy. You remember that song was out, Don't Worry, Be Happy, like a long time ago? And I remember listening to that as a kid, thinking, okay, and I would sing it over and over again. It's a good motto, but yet sometimes we do have to focus on the things that need to be focused on, and life's not just a bowl of cherries. Sometimes things have to be taken care of and they feel overwhelming, and we have to look at the truth, right? We have to actually look at it and see what we need to do. So maybe a different response, maybe instead of telling somebody to don't worry, be happy, hey, I see that you're under some stress, let me know how I can help. Is there anything I can do? So you're acknowledging the fact you're not getting in it with them, but you're acknowledging the fact that you can see that they're kind of stressed out, right? You're not just saying, hey, get over it. Just be quiet about it. Put a fake face on, put a mask on. I think we have enough problems in society today where a lot of folks are so stressed out and not necessarily in a very healthy mindset, but they put on an air, right? So they go to work and they smile and, you know what I mean? But then they don't feel that way. As we know, a lot of comedians, professional comedians, are relatively depressed, and not just situational depression. So, they can put a smile on people's faces and they're good and they show up on stage. But again, I'm not saying that we want everybody down in the dumps, but I'm saying, connecting with people and having a genuine communication is important. Let me give you one other example. Failure is not an option. I know that we've heard that a lot, right? When people are like, I am a lioness, she is a boss babe, or he's a boss, or whatever, and failure is not an option. Well, you know what? Sometimes things don't always work out the way we plan. And that can definitely be when somebody's going through something and they had a concept, or they were trying to do something in their career and it just didn't happen, didn't take off. Instead of telling somebody, well, hey, failure is not an option, or hey, you need to figure it out, it's more like, hey, you know what? We all go through it. Perhaps this is going to help you to find the next direction. But I understand it. And, success and growing, there's always going to be that learning curve. And I think also, if you flip the script, I don't believe that there is any failure. And that's another thing too, is that, when somebody would come to me and say, hey, I feel like I'm a failure, this didn't happen in my life. And I said, well, the thing is that you actually tried. Okay. So to me, if you try, there is no failure. The only time we fail, unfortunately, and I think we've all been there, and we have a ton of regret, is when we don't try. I mean, don't you agree with me? The pain and agony when you don't try. And I've been there where I said I was going to do something for myself. I kind of was like, God, and I finally went after it, but there was some time there that but then I've realized anytime that things didn't go to the level that I wanted to, it wasn't failure. It was just growth. Because I think that sometimes the thoughts that we have, the words that we use in the society that we're in, are just kind of crap. Right? They underestimate the human condition. Like the idea of failure to me, right? Failure to me is like so black and white. I mean, it really is. Failure to me really is the minimization of trying. Okay, like seriously, let's get deep. To me, when somebody says that somebody failed, okay, you just minimize what you did. You minimize it on every level because there is no failure. What do we define as failure? What do we define as success for that matter? I mean, to me, it's like success is like, hey, we woke up today, we're living, we're breathing, we're putting it together, we're walking out there, we're trying to put our best foot forward, we're out there, we're building up people instead of breaking them down. To me, that's a success all on its own. But a lot of times we put a lot of these words and we put these things in our lives. I also hear sometimes when it was interesting. It was I remember this was years and years ago, and I walked into like this group, and they were, it was kind of like a self help group, and talking, and I remember this one lady was talking about something, and this other person said, "Oh, positive vibes here. Hey, we're not going to get nothing besides positive vibes." And I was like, "Hey, that's cool." I was like, "But people can express their feelings, right?" I mean, and because I think that all of a sudden when we go from that extreme, it's like, okay, well then nothing else is allowed. So I want us to think about that. And looking for the silver linings, okay, but I think that we have to allow, hey, I'm going to listen to you express your feelings, and you don't have to listen for hours. I'm going to listen to you express your feelings, and hey, I'm here for you. What is there anything I can do to help? And hey, I understand that this is painful. If you can kind of dig into that pain, feel what that pain is and why you're feeling the pain, and then it's time to come out of that. Every emotion kind of has a season. It has a time, right? And so it's like, okay, we felt that, we were able to understand that and process that. Now let's move on. So let's talk about the difference between hopeful optimism and toxic positivity, because I think some people are like, well, hey, wait a second, I'm trying to be optimistic, I'm putting my best foot forward, I'm trying to do everything I can. How am I mean, what's going on? And so I feel like when we are an optimist, we're not marinating in our pain, right? We're dealing with it. We're understanding it. We're also, when we're an optimist, because optimism is great because it encourages us to see everything. It encourages us to deal with the pain, to deal with the grief, to deal with that stuff. But it also encourages us to move on. And I think that the genuine optimism, it's about genuine optimism. It's about, hey, I'm going to be optimistic, but I'm also going to care about your feelings. And I think that's really the only problem with the toxic positivity is that, instead of, kind of downplaying or making you feel bad for feeling a certain way, instead of that, we're acknowledging, right? We're acknowledging the feeling. We're acknowledging your feeling. We're acknowledging how you feel. We're allowing that to be. We're not trying to downplay that, right? But at the same time, the optimist comes back and says, hey, I'm glad to be able to be helpful, and I'm glad to be able to be a sounding board for you. And then the optimist has to come back at some point because we cannot marinate too much in the pain of the other person or wallow in it as well, because otherwise we're not being that optimist, right? Because otherwise we're kind of falling trap into those negative emotions and those negative vibrations. And I think also sometimes too is that the toxic positivity, the difference as well, because sometimes it can be hard because some of you out there are like, hey, I'm an optimist and I'm really out there and I'm trying to cheerlead for my fellow men and women, and I'm trying to do everything I can. And I use that in my own life, and that's not a bad thing, but being the optimist and not the toxic, positivity person, actually the big thing too is being able to basically understand and somewhat identify with other people and what they're going through. Okay. And I always find it interesting is that when I've realized when I haven't allowed someone to tell me what they're going, I kind of try to offset it or simplify it or, hey, hurry up, whatever. It's interesting how life is. It's like we have to be cognitive and we need to be responsible in our stewardship, and we need to also be, good friends and sounding board, because otherwise I've also found out, besides the fact that it's the best thing to do because it's the right thing to do, it's also interesting how the human condition allows us to experience something similar to what other people experience if we don't really see the pain that others are going through. So let me give you an example. A lot of us have to learn the hard way, right? But I feel like a way around learning the hard way is to be able to be empathetic. It's to be able to be an empath, to be empathetic and to feel for someone else and to respect what they're going through. I understand, like, an example that I'm just going to pull out of my head at this point. I remember years and years ago, I was having some massive back pain, and just massive. And I was always feeling horrible, and I couldn't take any pain pills because I have to go to work, and I wanted to always have a real clear head. And so all I would take is Advil, and Advil works, but not the level and that pain. So I kind of always hurt for a while, and I hurt for years and years, and I had a surgery, and then it kind of worked, and then, and then you had to add some other stuff, and it just was painful. But I remember the pain I was going through, and I remember people and I never shared. I didn't sit there going diatribes of the pain, but I might share it. And I remember people that would say, "Hey, yeah, you'll be fine. Just get over it. Yeah, it'll all work out." And then I remember people said, "Hey, I understand. I felt your pain. I understand, or I've been in that, or I've had other pain." And I've realized that nowadays too, like, when I come into someone that's dealing with a painful experience, maybe even if I haven't experienced that, even better, I really take into note about how the person is being affected. I really take into consideration how my thoughts are about what's happening to them. Because I've also realized that sometimes too, this whole concept of toxic positivity can be, like I was saying, a way of denial and pushing away some of those things in our life, right? Because we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to hear about it. We don't want to hear about the pain. Perhaps we don't want to deal with it in our own life. Also, a lot of times too, I think that when we look at the optimism, when we think about it, we can always be optimistic about things. We can always see, a kind of, okay, it's not woe is me. It's not happening to me. I am a person that can make changes. I am a powerful person. But I think the optimism is trying to find that power within our life, trying to understand that power in our life and trying to see that. And I think that's also an optimistic side of it, is that when we're able to analyze and realize that we do have power, and to some degree, and that we aren't the victim to some degree, that's when we can actually, I think that's when the optimism comes in. So it's not that you're saying that the issue that you're dealing with is not important. And it's not that you're saying that someone else's issue that they're dealing with is not important, but you're able to realize, or at least express, or at least illuminate to the person that they may have more power or ability to overcome this than maybe they know. Okay. And that's where I think true, honest, authentic optimism is, because we're actually allowing someone to better see their truth, And I think that's very powerful, right? That's where we need to be at, to better see their truth. And then we can radiate from that, right? And so that's a very important thing. Being able to understand that, being able to consider that. So, when we're looking at that, I think that this really helps us to understand the difference between the toxic positivity and the optimism, and how we actually help other people maybe to begin to realize their value, maybe to begin to realize, hey, I don't, this is a situation I'm dealing with. I'm not sure necessarily how I'm going to overcome it, but I've been able to express how I feel. And I also know when we allow other people to express how they feel, it's easier for them to begin to heal. Right. So it's like when people hold their emotions all in, they're not able to heal. It's the same as when you see someone stoic after they've lost a loved one. Right. It's like if they could just allow themselves to feel, or just to show it, they could actually overcome this quite quickly. And I've seen people where they sweep it under the rug, and they've swept it under the rug for so long. And maybe 10, 15 years later down the road, they don't know where the sadness is coming from. Well, we have to process all of our emotion. We have to process our emotion. And any emotion that we haven't processed, we will eventually at some point process, even if it's transmuted into anger or resentment. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking more about optimism, how to understand it, how to really connect, and how to really be there for your own self and your own emotions, as well as others. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives with your host, Lee Burgess. Will be back in. I'll be back this time. 2 shakes.
I hope you've enjoyed.
Okie dokie. We're going to go off the satellite for a second. We have 3 minutes here. Let's see who else is tuned in. Rick, great to see you. How are you doing? Yeah, that's fantastic insight about how expecting things to magically get better without dealing with our issues is positive toxicity. Yeah, I mean, and I like magic. I loved Harry Potter and all the other magic movies, but at the same time, you're right. It's about, I think the magic in itself is like accepting it and moving forward, not wallowing it, and then being able to deal with that. And I totally love that that quote. Yes, Nas, yes, toxic positivity enables gaslighting. It is. It is a gaslighting technique. It can be. It can be. And the person that is giving it might not know it, but they might. But it can be very gaslighting, because it's invalidation of one's emotions. When people, it's like anything. It's like when somebody says, just get over it, or I'm just joking. Haven't you had it where somebody's making fun of you and they don't step up to the plate to say that? Instead, they just go, hey, you need to get over it. I mean, this is a joke. Well, I don't know about you, but I've had that said to me before in the past by certain people. They're not kidding. Okay. It's not a joke. Okay. Like they're going after you, and they're going to hide what they're doing by saying that to make you question your reality. So, and then other people too. So if you bring it up in front of other people, for example, like, hey, what was that about? I don't know what you're talking about. I was being nice. I thought that was funny, or I thought we're just joking here. And then it invalidates you, and then other people don't really realize that they're going after you. Totally agree. Very, very, very well stated. Julie, great to see you. Paige, great to see you. Julie, like sweeping the dirt under the carpet. Totally true. Amen. I love that. Thomas, great to see you. How are you doing? Aloha. Oh, I like that. Festus, that's a great comment. Imagine a metronome. This thing, musician use a metronome keeping time. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Thomas, good talk. Glad you're here. Yeah, no empathy. I agree with you. I mean, it's hard when somebody doesn't have any empathy, right? It's like, and some of us, it's a God-given gift, right? Some of us got empathy, but we can all get more empathetic if we actually think about it. Like, it's interesting because a lot of people think that everybody's disconnected, right? They think that everybody is separate, and it's just not true. We are all connected. And I really want to catch on that when we come back, because I think that some people don't want to be connected, or they don't want to see it, or they can't see outside of themselves, right? So it's like, if they can't see outside of themselves and they're not self-aware, how can they be aware of what we are going through? We have about a minute before we go back to the station. Congratulations, sobriety since 1990. That's awesome. That's success. That's success. I'm only going to be able to talk a couple of minutes after the show because I have back-to-back clients after. Here we go. Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Here we go. We've been talking about toxic positivity, and the difference between toxic positivity and authentic optimism. And right before the break, like right during the break, I was actually talking to some folks, with folks on the social media live feed. If you're listening to the radio, I'm able to kind of talk a little bit on that. And I was talking about how sometimes, as a positive, optimistic person, as an optimistic person that's authentic, we are able to connect. Many of us have empathy, right? So many of us have this God-given talent of empathy, but we can also, even if it's not as deep and within us, we can cultivate that, right? Having that empathy for other people, being able to be an empath, being able to connect with somebody and understand what they're going through. We might not experience every experience on this planet, right? But somebody's experiencing something. And so at least the fact is that we can connect with them and understand better their experience. And sometimes if we actually, and I know this sounds weird, but if we actually do that properly and we actually do that with honesty, we don't necessarily have to experience all these things. Okay. So I know that sounds wild. That's like a whole portal into a different reality, but we don't have to experience everything, you know. And if we actually, connect with a person and we actually feel how they feel, at least to as the best degree as we can possibly, taking into consideration how they feel and respecting that and connecting with that, we might not have to experience that. And I'm not saying that we're all going to do that so that we can forgo negative situations in our life, but what I am saying is it's powerful to be able to give someone a safe environment to speak, right? And to be able to not only help them to connect the dots, but also to be there on the back end, to be in an optimistic, positive way that's not invalidating. And I think nowadays more than anything, I mean, we want to validate our children, we want to validate our family, we want to validate our spouse in a way that we validate their emotions. Us being around should not be validating them. They need to validate from the inside out, and they need to be able to validate themselves. They need to be able to validate themselves, and they need to be able to connect with themselves as well. And they need to be able to accept their emotions on a big level. They need to be able to accept it. And I think that the more and more we get away from toxic positivity, the more we're able to digest those feelings. The more we get away from toxic positivity as a group, as a civilization, on this planet, the more we go from this fakery, right? This fakery to actually accepting the human condition, going away from the fakery and actually accepting the trials and tribulations, but also the amazing times and the amazingly awesome, joy-filled times as well. And I think that allows us to have not only that ability, but also we can connect. And so I think that one of the big things we feel is that we're disconnected from other people. We feel like we're separate, right? And that's just not the truth. It's not the truth at all. And so if we can begin to understand that when somebody feels a certain way, we can also step up to the plate and be there as well, helping them and also understanding how that impacts us. And is there something that we're not dealing with in our own life that has impacted us that we also need to deal with? We may need to deal with some stuff that we haven't dealt with. We may need to process things we haven't processed. And listening to this person and acknowledging their feelings can help us to process our own stuff. And what I've realized too is that if somebody is triggered to be toxically positive, okay, if somebody's triggered to do that, that's because they're hiding from themselves. Okay, so think about that. I want you to think about that. Yes, they are hiding from themselves. Definitely. It is a form of gaslighting to some degree, but the gaslighting might be happening because they're almost gaslighting themselves, right? Because they haven't allowed themselves to be. So this is very powerful stuff. I hope that this show is connected with you. We'll be back next week. I don't know what we'll be talking about, but we'll be talking about something hopefully that you'll connect with and enjoy. If you haven't already, check out the YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, put in Ashley Berges, Ashley Berges, new content every week, new video content. Check out the website, Ashley Berges, ashleyburgess.com. And I'll be back soon. We'll be having more conversations, and I look forward to it. Thanks for tuning in. Live your true life perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.
It is interesting
job,
to see how
Chris.
the subjects on Ashley's true.
Oh, great. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm so glad to have y'all here. It has been a great show. I hope you've connected with it. And I do think the last part that I brought up, triggered to be toxically positive, is a big thing that we have to look at, just as much as, some of y'all said as well, analysis, the gaslighting. So we need to really look at that. But also sometimes they can be doing it and we take it really, really personally. And I think if we look past it, though, a lot of people haven't been processing their emotions. And I would just look and say, okay, knowing that person's going through that, that's not something that I can share my feelings with. That's not something that I can process my life with. And because they are unable to process. And, it might be something that you bring up to them as well. I mean, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't have to be in a negative way, but sometimes people aren't going to take any sort of, sometimes it takes a time. What I've realized is that when When you lead someone to water, they might look at the water, they might not ever drink the water, they might walk around it, but eventually they're going to remember it's there. Okay. And so you don't want to get caught up in the fact that in the moment they didn't take the advice or in the moment they didn't hear you clearly. Don't worry about it. Let it sink in. Okay. Don't even bring it up again for a while. Okay. Over time, people need things to sink in. And sometimes people operate mentally and emotionally slower than you. Okay. And that might be upsetting as well. But I want you to connect with that and realize you can provide information in a positive way. If somebody was to give you positive toxicity, just, hey, I appreciate the silver lining. I was just expressing myself, but I'm hoping I'm not triggering you with a situation you're dealing with. Or, hey, okay, cool. It's just, this is something I'm going to go talk about with somebody that is going to be able to be open and be able to connect with emotion. And you don't have to say it that way, but you can know that also, or you can try to help that person. But the big deal is don't allow them to minimalize or take you down because you're actually expressing a human emotion. That's the key. Don't be upset about it. Don't try to beat yourself up for it. That's where I want you to really think about. Don't beat yourself up for it. Don't feel bad about it. Okay. Don't say, oh, I should be in this. I should be happy. I should have a smile on my face. Don't go there. Okay. We don't want to beat ourselves up anymore. So if somebody's making you feel that way, either address it or move on, or realize that you can't express yourself to them. Okay. I hope this show has helped y'all. I got to jump into some sessions, but I'll be back next week. I think we might be doing a live feed on YouTube and Facebook separate from the show next week, I think. Probably on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And on next Saturday, we'll be on the radio as long as football allows us to be. We are on AM radio, so, we get preempted sometimes by these football games, these college games, and sometimes pro games as well, but these college games right now. And so we'll see. But right now, I think we're going to be live on Saturday. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for connecting. Let me know if you have any ideas. This concept for the show was emailed to me by Zen and me, and she said, hey, could you talk about toxic positivity? So if you want and you have an idea for a show, reach out. Just go to ashleyburgess.com. Just click on that contact page and send me a message and let me know what's up. And let me know some of the concepts you'd like me to talk about, because I am here to talk about what matters to you. Y'all are awesome. In a good, optimistic way, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Do your best. Make things happen. Find happiness as much as you can and success and just being you. And as we all do, and as I do on a daily basis, I'm constantly trying to work at being the best I can be and the best version of me, better than I was yesterday, and working to be every day more comfortable in my own skin and happier and feeling just at peace with who I am. And it takes work, but I think that's where we're all going, right? And I'm just happy to be a part of with y'all and in this family, and looking forward to your suggestions and ideas. So definitely go to the website if you can. Go to ashleyburgess.com and then send me a message. I respond. So. And I look forward to hearing from you, and I appreciate you taking the time, if you do, to send me a message. Have a great weekend. Y'all take care. Much respect. Much love.